When I started this class, I felt pretty confident in my cultural competence. I had gone through a journey similar to the one both Howard and Kendall had experienced, and I wasn't sure what else a multicultural class could teach me, other than adding to my knowledge bank of how to be better. As Dr. Ford says, working within this field is an ongoing learning experience that doesn't end. But I had no idea that the class would be a catalyst for personal, courageous conversations of my own with people I love, that it would refine and solidify my plans to work in the cross-section between multicultural and gifted ed, and that I'd gain professional contacts and a new job by the end of the summer. I hope that my story in some way inspires you. This summer, I was lucky to have been a teaching assistant for Vanderbilt's Gifted and Talented Youth program. I was a little worried before I started about the potential lack of diversity I'd experience in the role, especially after having come off a semester as a gifted specialist in an affluent white suburb of Nashville. But my worries were not actualized as I got to work with racially and culturally diverse students, twice exceptional, and navigate through all sizes and shapes of socio-emotional issues. I did a case analysis on a Black student who was starting to show signs of underachievement. He expressed feeling less smart than the other students. Although each session was only a week long, I felt way more equipped to engage him in the class because of my readings. As an advocate for the students, I also got to talk with instructors about gifted characteristics that would externalize themselves in certain behaviors. Some of the instructors were not actually teachers, but experts in their respective fields, whether that be writing or field ecology. When my boss suggested that one of my kids could potentially be on the spectrum, I explained that his behaviors aligned more to ADHD and attentive type, with some impulsivity issues. Because of this, we were able to strategize on how to best meet his socio-emotional needs and how to redirect him toward class participation and impulse control. Another student, an African-American girl, came up to me after our session and told me how much she loved that I had been her TA. During her class, she and the other African-American girls had clustered to a corner table. I had suggested to the instructor that we change up the seating arrangement to provide more varied experiences for the children. This child was able to interact with people who looked nothing like her in a safe environment where they could exchange ideas. During an activity where students started a story and then rotated the story around the table to the next person, this student wrote in a similar style as the girl before her. When I asked what made her choose to do that, she said, "I wanted to stay true to the tone they were going for." This girl was 9 years old. It was fun to talk with her after the session about the new class she was in and what the coming school year would look like for her. On the last day of the summer program, she gave me a hug. We were both sad to say goodbye. The second course objective that I met was evaluating personal beliefs and professional experience related to multicultural gifted ed issues. This goal was met not within the classroom itself, but in an extension to it as I thought through content. Helping my boyfriend Ezra understand how giftedness affects my life, both in my passions and my personal life since I'm also gifted, was a task in itself. He was skeptical of the term and said it wasn't concrete enough, that it lacked boundaries that would allow it to be known apart from other things. No matter how much I explained it, he still seemed confused. But as we spent more time together and my overexcited abilities showed themselves more prevalently, he began to understand. I would also explain the kinds of socio-emotional interactions I had with gifted students at work. Kids breaking down bawling because of a time limit or paralyzed with anxiety over issues of perfectionism. Even though he didn't always understand what to do in situations of heightened emotion or sensitivity with me, he started to ask what it feels like to be gifted and how best to meet my needs. He now understands my job in a more real way and has a deeper respect for my passions. In addition to conversations about giftedness, this summer session launched us into sometimes frustrating conversations about race equity issues in education and in the wider world. He cringed whenever I said the word white privilege and rejected Howard's theory when I first presented it to him. Over time, however, we learned how to talk to each other about these hot-button, often controversial issues. Ezra said that he learned a lot, particularly from my illustration about the difference between equality and equity, which acted as a backdrop for a lot of the other loaded terms used today. He also said he would admit he has white privilege, although he doesn't think that's a helpful term to describe the condition, and we talked about the kind of heavy lifting I'll be spending the rest of my life doing. So, what will I do next? My plans are to finish my last year of this MED program, apply to PhD program. Specifically, I am very interested in working with Dr. Ford, as she is at the crux between multicultural and gifted ed and is very prolific in her field. And I'm thinking potentially to become a professor of multicultural ed, or start a nonprofit, or open a school of the urban gifted, or maybe all three. We have so many models, diagrams, and theories to discuss issues within the fields, but we don't seem to have the same expectations of ourselves when having courageous conversations with others outside of the field. If we truly believe education can lead to massive change, then why don't we care more about how and what we're communicating? In a similar vein to Howard, I hadn't thought too much about the people or mindsets causing a lot of the problems other than to let them know that they were. But by taking this class and engaging in outside conversations, I came up with an idea to use counseling techniques to take people through their own journey toward racial equity. This could take the form of having more classroom simulations about race in elementary school, in order for students to have mock experiences that will catalyze mindset change to exposing friends and family to materials, potentially books, documentaries, or environments, where they will be forced to deal with their own assumptions about communities that are foreign to them. When I started this class, I had dreams of one day opening a school for gifted Black youth. Now, I still have a dream, but to open a school for urban minority youth with a multicultural curriculum and methods of instruction that mirror a diversity of communities. So these are two areas that I feel like I've grown or changed, even though my personal and professional goals haven't changed specifically. With my interest in pursuing a PhD degree at Vanderbilt University, I'm excited about my growing connection with Dr. Ford. Reading her textbook was fun, and knowing that she collaborated on research with Dr. Grantham. It's funny when you realize how close-knit the community of researchers in this cross-section really is, and I hope to contribute to it sooner rather than later. Dr. Ford is a prolific writer and speaker on these issues, and she's passionate about racial equity. I love how she makes a distinction in her text between multicultural instruction and curriculum. She even goes so far as to say that people criticize her for making that distinction, but that it's an important one. I completely agree with her. I also made connections this summer at Vanderbilt's Gifted and Talented Youth Program. Even though I knew my workload would be hardly manageable, working a full-time job and double coursework for the summer session of grad school, I knew that the networking and collaboration I would have would far surpass the exhaustion and time constraints I would find myself in. I don't know of any other opportunity where I would have been able to work with such a wide array of children in such a short amount of time. I was so surprised by the diversity present in this program in race and ethnicity, but also in talent and skill. Some students had strong leadership skills, while others were highly creative. There were dancers, fidgeters, lovers of words. Wherever I go, I'll continue to keep in touch with this team, the one that I worked with this summer. Who knows, potentially I might help them promote awareness of an effectiveness of addressing race, class, gender, and/or linguistic diversity within home schools and community settings in ways that I can't now anticipate. Here are just a couple research plans that I am looking into as I think about what I would potentially do for a dissertation. So I'm very interested in multicultural curriculum and instruction that meets particular socio-emotional needs. And that kind of leads directly into this idea of PTSD and its relationship to student behavior. There's this doctor named Dr. Nadine Burke, and she just published a book about the connection between post-traumatic stress as a child and its physical effects. And I'd also like to know what connection it has to student behavior, not just their physical health. And then lastly, how to tap into education majors at local universities to partner as mentors or TAs for school communities. We have such a vast array of people who need experience and don't have a degree yet, and we have these teacher education programs with so little field work. So I think that we could do a lot more to partner with local universities and get a lot of what we've talked about all summer with mentorships and role models for these kids, more than just these nonprofits that sometimes come into the schools to work with them. And that's about all. I hope you guys enjoyed.